He hid that he was the owner of the restaurant to find true love, but the waitress made him. The night Daniel Whitmore put on a stranger's apron and walked into his own restaurant as a nobody, he thought he was being smart. He had no idea he was walking straight into the one moment that would crack his entire life open, and that the woman who'd do it wouldn't even be trying. Daniel was 36 years old and had everything a man is supposed to want. He owned Ember, a upscale restaurant in downtown Nashville, Tennessee, the kind of place where reservations were made a month in advance and the wine list had its own dedicated sommelier. He had a penthouse apartment 12 minutes away, a black Range Rover, and a name that got him into rooms most people never see the inside of. What he didn't have was a single person in his life who looked at him like he was just a man. His last serious relationship had ended 14 months ago when he overheard his girlfriend of 3 years on the phone, telling her sister that she'd never leave him because the lifestyle was too good. She hadn't sounded cruel about it. That was almost worse, she'd sounded practical, the way someone talks about a good insurance policy. He'd ended it that same night. Since then, every date felt like an audition, every smile felt calculated, and every conversation circled back, eventually, to what he owned. So on a quiet Tuesday morning in October, Daniel did something impulsive and a little desperate. He called his general manager, told him he was running an anonymous staff evaluation, borrowed a plain black server's apron from the supply closet, and introduced himself to the floor team as Danny, a new hire from a temp agency. Nobody questioned it. The restaurant was understaffed that week, and an extra set of hands was an extra set of hands. He told himself he just needed to feel human again. To be in a room where nobody knew his name. He lasted 30 minutes before everything he thought he knew about himself got quietly rearranged. Her name was Sophie Reyes. She'd been working at Ember for 2.5 years, and she moved through that dining room like she'd been born knowing its rhythms, quick, precise, warm with customers in a way that never felt performative. She had dark eyes, a ponytail that was fighting a losing battle by the end of every shift, and a habit of humming very quietly under her breath when she was in the weeds and needed to stay calm. Daniel ran food to her section that first day. She said thank you without looking up, rattled off 3 modifications she needed him to remember for the next run, and handed him an extra side of bread to drop at table 4 because, she said, the guy at 4 looks like he's been waiting his whole life for someone to just bring him bread without being asked. Daniel looked at table 4. The man's face when the bread arrived suggested she wasn't wrong. Something shifted in Daniel's chest that he didn't have a name for yet. Over the following 2 weeks, he came back every Tuesday and Friday. He told himself it was about the evaluation. He wasn't fooling anyone, least of all himself. He started to learn the small architecture of who Sophie was, the way she divided her tips with the kitchen staff even though she didn't have to, the way she kept a photo of a little girl tucked inside her order book, the way she got quiet and focused when things got hard instead of unraveling. He learned that she was a mother, her daughter Maya was 6, currently staying with Sophie's mother on weeknights so Sophie could work doubles. He learned she was taking online accounting classes at night because she wanted to open a small catering business someday. She had a 5-year plan written in a spiral notebook she kept in her locker. She talked to Danny the way people talk when they're not trying to impress anyone, honestly, sometimes bluntly, occasionally with a dry humor that caught him off guard and made him laugh in a way he hadn't in longer than he could remember. She told him once, during a 15-minute break they spent sitting on overturned milk crates behind the kitchen, that she'd heard the owner of Ember was some rich guy who'd inherited the concept from a business partner and barely showed his face. She said it without any particular bitterness, just as a fact about the world she operated in. Daniel said nothing. He nodded and looked at his hands. That night he went home and sat in his penthouse for a long time in the dark. He knew he needed to tell her. Every day he didn't was another layer of something dishonest building between them. But he kept finding reasons to wait, one more conversation, one more Tuesday, one more moment of being just Danny, a nobody in an apron, who a woman with dark eyes talked to like he was worth talking to. His second mistake was thinking he could control how long the lie lasted. 3 Fridays later, Sophie came to work carrying something heavy that had nothing to do with her section. She was professional as always, but Daniel had learned to read the small signals, the tension across her shoulders, the way she didn't hum. During their break, she told him. Her landlord had sold the building her apartment was in. She had 45 days to find somewhere new in a rental market that had lost its mind. She'd already done the math. There was no version of it that worked without either pulling Maya out of her school district or cutting something else she couldn't afford to cut. She said it evenly, the way a person talks about a problem they're not going to let beat them even though it already kind of is. Then she looked up and said, "Sorry. You didn't ask." "Don't apologize," Daniel said. She looked at him for a moment. Then she said, quietly, "You know what I wrote in that 5-year plan? The first thing, before the catering company, before any of it." She shook her head with a small, tired smile. "I wrote, stop needing to be rescued. Do everything yourself." She paused. "I'm real tired of life making that hard to stick to." Daniel went home that night and didn't sleep. The following Tuesday, he didn't come in through the back. He walked through the front entrance in a charcoal suit, greeted by the hostess by name, stopping to speak briefly with the floor manager while half the dining room took quiet notice. He walked directly to Sophie's section. She was at table 11, and she saw him from across the room. She went absolutely still. The order pad in her hand dropped a few inches. Her face did the thing that faces do when two completely incompatible pieces of information are trying to occupy the same space at the same time. He stopped in front of her. The nearby tables had gone quiet. "My name is Daniel Whitmore," he said. "I own this restaurant. And I need to tell you that, and I need to say I'm sorry, and I need you to know that every single conversation we had, every word of it, was real. I wasn't playing a game. I was just a person who forgot what it felt like to be treated like one, and I handled it badly, and you deserved better than that from the beginning." Sophie looked at him for a long moment. Her jaw was tight. Her eyes were bright in a way that has nothing to do with happiness. "You need to walk away from me right now," she said. Very quiet. Very controlled. He nodded. He reached into his jacket pocket and set a folded envelope on the table beside her, a letter he'd written at 2 in the morning, along with a formal document. The restaurant had a 2-bedroom apartment 2 blocks away, used for out-of-town chefs on residency. It was hers for a full year, no strings attached, if she wanted it. The letter also said, simply, that if she never wanted to speak to him again, he understood completely. And that her daughter's school district wouldn't change, because he'd checked. Then he walked out. She didn't call for 11 days. When she did, she didn't say hello. She said, "Maya wants to know if the man who owns the restaurant is going to be at dinner on Saturday, because if he is, she wants him to know she only eats her pasta without sauce." Daniel pressed his hand flat against his kitchen counter and breathed. "Tell Maya," he said, "that I'll make sure they have plain pasta. And I'll be there." There was a pause. Then Sophie said, very softly, "Okay, Danny." And somehow, the way she said that name, that nothing name, that borrowed name, the one that had nothing attached to it, meant more to him than anything anyone had ever called him in his whole, expensive, carefully constructed life. Here is what Daniel Whitmore learned the hard way: money can buy you a room full of people and still leave you completely alone. The moment you stop hiding what you're afraid of and just tell the truth, even badly, even late, even in the middle of a dining room with people watching, that is the moment your real life finally has room to begin. If this story stayed with you, hit like, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe to the channel. New stories every week.